You ever catch yourself explaining your dream to someone, and halfway through, you already feel smaller? Like the more you say, the more uncertain it sounds? That sinking feeling, it's not about the dream. It's about what explaining does to it. Sometimes, in the name of clarity, you chip away at your own conviction. You explain because you want to be understood. But underneath that, there's something quieter. Something you may not admit to yourself. You want permission. You want reassurance. You want someone to say, "Yes, this makes sense. Go do it." And the more people you seek that from, the more you begin to think you need it. What you might not realize is that every time you over-explain, you give away a little authority, not just to the person you're talking to, but to the version of yourself that doubts this path. You feed the doubt with language. You stretch it out with justification. You argue with the part of the world that was never asking you for a defense. And what do you get in return? Usually, a blank stare, a polite nod, a well-meaning concern. And now, instead of moving forward, you're managing someone else's emotions about your vision. That's the cost. It shows up in ways you don't immediately link back to explaining. Procrastination, second-guessing, over-planning, all of it a ripple effect of putting your inner knowing up for debate. You start to edit your idea before it even lives. You make it smaller, more palatable, less likely to scare anyone off. And with that, it becomes less likely to succeed. It happens in relationships too. You find yourself softening your plans, dressing them up, trying to preempt judgment. You keep explaining because you think it will make rejection hurt less. But really, it just delays it. Or worse, it makes you start rejecting yourself first. There's a moment, though, a powerful one, when you notice the pattern. When you hear yourself mid-sentence and think, "Why am I justifying this again?" That's not a moment of failure. That's the beginning of awareness. That's when you start to take your voice back. Here's something to try. Imagine the one thing you've been meaning to do but keep waiting to get clear on. Instead of explaining it in your mind or out loud, build a version of it. A crude one. Just enough to make it real. A sketch. A trial. A 1-minute attempt. Notice how that feels. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It just has to exist. You may feel fear rise up. Fear of being wrong, of looking foolish, of failing in public. That's normal. But feel this too. The quiet thrill of doing something without a press release. The strength of taking action without applause. That's power. And here's a journaling prompt to sit with tonight. What are you trying to earn through explanation that you already have access to by action? Write about a time you waited too long to move because you were still trying to get everyone else on board. What did you lose? What did you learn? No shame, just notice it. And then, remember that little promise you made to yourself earlier? About the thing you wanted to build? Picture doing it silently. Picture letting it live in motion before it lives in language. Because once you stop explaining and start building, something in you starts to trust itself again. And that is the beginning of everything. You begin to see it now. Not everyone will get it. Not everyone needs to. You've spent a long time thinking that being understood was a kind of validation. That if people could just see what you see, feel what you feel, they'd agree. And that agreement would finally give you the green light to go. But here's the truth you've started to taste. That green light was never theirs to give. You are not owed understanding. Not from your family, not from your friends, not from the people you love most. That realization hurts at first, because you've invested so much in being understood. You've practiced your pitch, told your story 10 different ways, softened your message for different ears. But still, confusion. Still, doubt. Still, silence. And that silence has nothing to do with your potential. It has everything to do with the limits of other people's experience. It's not their job to grasp what only you were meant to carry, especially when it's early, messy, unclear, especially when you're still figuring it out yourself. The irony is, you may have been looking for clarity through conversation, when in truth, Clarity grows through creation. You've been planting seeds and asking others to describe the full-grown tree. They can't. They won't. And that's not betrayal. That's just the nature of vision. It's time to ask yourself, what am I really looking for when I explain? Do I want connection, encouragement, approval? Because if it's connection, you can get that without turning your life into a presentation. If it's encouragement, you can learn to give that to yourself. And if it's approval, then you have to be honest. Do I need approval? Or do I need the courage to move forward without it? There's a weight that lifts when you stop demanding others see your inner landscape. You stop trying to convert. You stop trying to please. You stop trying to argue with people whose stories were never built to contain yours. Instead, you start preserving your energy. You notice where your words land and where they don't. You learn to discern who's asking to understand and who's just listening politely, waiting for their turn to speak. And more importantly, you start talking to yourself differently. You shift from, how do I explain this so they'll get it? To, how do I protect the energy I need to build this well? Here's a scenario to consider. You sit across from someone you care about. Maybe it's your partner, your parent, an old friend. You've just shared a decision you've made, a move, a project, a pivot. Their face clouds. Their questions come. Doubt sneaks in. You feel yourself reaching for the right angle, the right metaphor, the perfect sentence that will soothe them. You feel the spiral start. Now pause the scene. Instead of explaining, what if you simply said, "You don't have to understand. I do." Say it again. "You don't have to understand. I do." That sentence isn't defiance, it's sovereignty. It's the moment you step out of the waiting room and into the workshop. Thought experiment for the week. Every time you catch yourself about to explain something personal, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this to connect or to convince? If it's connection, make sure you're safe and open for it. If it's to convince, try silence, just once. Let the discomfort rise. Let the need for approval loosen its grip. You'll be surprised how much energy returns to you, how much clarity, how much relief. Because when you stop expecting to be understood, you become something far more powerful, self-led, self-held, unshakable, and you get to carry that into the next moment. No explanation required. You stop talking, you start building. And at first, it's quiet, so quiet, you almost miss the shift. But it's there. There's a new kind of tension in the air. One that hums instead of panics. You feel it when you open your laptop and actually start, when your hands get involved, when the idea is no longer bouncing around your mind but anchored to a to-do list, a sketch, a calendar block, a single line of effort. You've crossed the threshold, not because you announced it, not because someone nodded in approval, but because you moved. It feels small at first, insignificant. Like placing a single brick and wondering how long it'll take to build a wall. But then, another brick, another step, and something shifts in you. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady. This is the part no one tells you about. That when you stop explaining, you stop rehearsing a performance, and you start rehearsing a life. One where your worth isn't up for debate. One where your actions whisper truths your words could never say. You begin to feel it in your posture, in the way you hold your morning, in how you respond when someone asks, "What are you working on lately?" You don't flinch, you don't overshare, you just smile, say what needs to be said, and return to your work. Because now you understand, the work is the explanation. It speaks for you. It carries your convictions, your effort, your persistence. It shows your imagination, your attention, your courage. And it does so in a language beyond words. Want a thought experiment? Try this. Imagine a world where no one can hear you speak. Only watch what you do. For 30 days, your voice is muted, but your life plays out in full view. Would your values show? Would your vision reveal itself in your routines? Would someone observing your choices know what matters to you? Not to judge yourself, just to notice. Are your actions leading the way, or are your words still doing most of the work? In this world of constant sharing, it's easy to confuse talking about progress with making it. You post an intention, and it feels like an achievement. You outline your plans to friends, and it feels like motion. But it's vapor. It fades fast, and it doesn't build anything you can stand on when the doubt creeps in. But action, even clumsy, halting, imperfect action, that builds something inside you. It's not just confidence, it's proof. Proof that you follow through. Proof that you're capable. Proof that your life can expand in directions that don't need an audience. Here's a real-life moment that might feel familiar. You're alone, working on something no one asked for. No deadline, no applause, just effort. And for a moment, you think, why am I doing this? Who even cares? But you keep going. You finish the sketch, you complete the draft, you hit save. And in that moment, right there, you've created something no one can take from you. Self-trust. Because what you build alone builds you. A simple prompt for today. Where can I make something visible without announcing it? Maybe it's a side project, a routine, a gesture of care, a boundary, a practice. Something that says, I'm moving, not to impress, not to declare, just to live aligned. That's the real shift. You don't move louder, you move deeper. You're no longer chasing the echo of agreement. You're listening for the sound of your own steps on solid ground. And with every one of those steps, you become a little more free. Silence used to feel like a void. Now, it feels like power. You're not disappearing. You're becoming more focused. You're not hiding. You're choosing where to be visible and where to be sacred. There's a new gravity to you. Not because you've done something grand, but because you've stopped explaining what you're about to do and instead you do it. And when you do it quietly, something interesting happens. People start to notice. Not all at once, not loudly, but their tone shifts. Their questions get more curious. They sense something has changed, even if they can't name it. That's the gravity of silence. It doesn't beg for attention. It draws it. You feel it most when someone asks what you're working on and you don't tell them everything. Not because you're secretive, but because you're selective. You know what's still ripening. You protect what's unfinished. You've learned the hard way what happens when you share too soon, when fragile ideas get poked at before they've had a chance to grow. So now, you keep more close to the chest. You become someone who's not broadcasting every move, every intention, every spark, not out of fear, but out of respect, for the process, for your energy, for the space it takes to actually build instead of narrate. Here's a scenario to sit with. You're working on a goal. It's important to you, but it's not ready for the world yet. Then someone asks, so, what are you up to these days? You feel that tug, the old instinct to overshare, to prove you're doing something worthy. But this time, you pause. You say something simple. I'm focusing on something that matters. I'll share when it's ready. And you mean it. In that pause, you take back the space you used to give away. You stop leaking momentum through premature explanations. You hold your process like it deserves protection, which it does. This is where you realize that mystery isn't manipulation. It's medicine. Letting people wonder a little, letting the work reveal itself when it's ready. That's not cold. That's wise. That's mature. That's you learning how to create from alignment instead of approval. Here's a simple but powerful thought experiment. What if you didn't post or share anything about your current focus for 30 days? Not even a hint. Would your energy grow? Would the project feel more grounded? Would your mind be quieter, more focused? Silence doesn't mean isolation. It means containment. And containment builds power. Think about it like a seed in the soil. It's quiet down there, no applause, no feedback, just growth, pressure, darkness, transformation, and eventually, emergence. Not because it's forced, but because it's ready. That's you now. You're learning that being misunderstood isn't a threat, it's a filter. The people who need every detail to stay connected, maybe they were never really listening. The ones who trust your process even without all the context, those are the ones worth keeping close. There's a new kind of confidence that's growing in you. one that doesn't ask, "Do they get it?" but says, "I'm okay if they don't." And in that space, where explanation used to live, you plant something steadier, your presence. Try this journaling prompt tonight. What part of me feels the need to explain? What part of me is learning to hold instead? Let those two selves talk, the part that's scared to be misunderstood, and the part that knows you're building something too important to dilute with early commentary. Because silence doesn't shrink you, it expands your reach when the time is right. You're not loud anymore, you're undeniable. You stop explaining, not as a strategy, not as a test, but because you no longer need to. Something has shifted in you, quietly, completely. You've built enough now to see the pattern clearly. The more you act, the less you crave acknowledgement. The more you commit, the less you wait for consensus. The more real it becomes to you, the less it has to be proven to anyone else. And that's the real change. Not the results, not the progress other people can see, but who you are inside your own skin now. You used to measure your conviction by how persuasive you sounded. Now, you measure it by how willing you are to show up without applause, without permission, without a perfect plan. You carry your choices with a steadiness that doesn't seek validation. You're no longer building just a project, or a career, or a version of your life that others will admire. You're building you. And the more you build, the more you realize how little explaining was ever required in the first place. You were trying to translate something sacred into a language not everyone could understand. And now, you don't. You let it speak through your posture, through your priorities, through your presence. Let's sit with a moment you've probably lived before. You're walking into a room full of people who once knew the older version of you, the one who second-guessed, the one who explained everything, the one who tried to keep everyone comfortable. And as you enter, you feel the old pull to make yourself smaller, more relatable, easier to accept. But you don't shrink. You stay upright. You listen more than you speak. And when you do speak, it's with clarity, not defensiveness. You no longer need to explain your path, because you're walking it. This is what building does, not just externally, internally. It sharpens your instincts. It deepens your boundaries. It teaches you where your energy grows and where it drains. And most of all, it reintroduces you to the version of yourself that never needed to be defended, only discovered. So now, when someone doesn't understand you, you don't panic. When they question your choices, you don't spiral. When you face silence or criticism or skepticism, you don't fold because you're not explaining anymore. You're expressing with action, with alignment, with the kind of self-trust you only get from doing the thing. Try this final practice. Write down one way you've changed, not in theory, but in action. What's something you do now that the old you only talked about? Hold that close. That's your proof. That's your growth. That's your becoming. And now let's soften the edges. You don't need a perfect ending to keep going. Growth doesn't land in a straight line. It loops, pauses, tests, breathes. You'll explain sometimes. You'll seek approval again. And that's okay. What matters is you know now. You feel the difference. And more importantly, you can return to the quieter place, the steadier path, the part of you that builds not to be seen, but because it's how you become whole. No grand declarations, no final words. Just this: you are allowed to trust yourself, fully, silently, boldly, even, especially, when no one else sees the full picture yet. Keep going, you're doing better than you think.